Hey everybody, how you doing? Andy McPhee here, along with my wonderful friend Doug Kenny, who I've had the privilege of coaching and mentoring for nearly 6 years. And I think it's probably going to change soon that he'll be coaching and mentoring me because the transformation in this young guy is just incredible. What I'd like to just give a shout out to Cafe de Chateau. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Really cool company. I love their equipment. I love their coffee cold brew makers. I'm a big fan of bulletproof coffee and the coconut oil and the grass-fed butter. I love using it before training. It's a really cool energy boost. So having the equipment from Cafe de Chateau is amazing. Check out their website. It's awesome. Welcome to Coffee and Conversation, and I'm sure you're going to guess what we're talking about today is that little voice in your head and that little one on the shoulder and the one on the other shoulder. Doug, how you doing, mate? How's things going from in Phoenix, Arizona?
Things are going very good. The weather is beautiful, the day is bright, and I have company coming over tonight, so that should be good.
That's awesome, man. Well, listen, Doug, we're here again with Coffee and Conversation, and what we're going to chat about today is, that little voice in our head, which, it's, one person hears, giving us all these positive thoughts and lifting us up, and then we've got the one on the other side who's Mr. Like, yeah, no, don't do that. Oh, why are you doing this? Oh, you got to do that. Didn't you forget to do that? Yes, I know. Shut up. And I think you've got the same, Doug, with your little characters there behind you. So can you just explain to me what that image behind you means? Like, because you've had an amazing journey from a young kid with dealing with high functioning autism to being overweight, 320 pound. Where do you think that little voice in your head actually put you into places you didn't want to go into, possibly, depression, not feeling good about yourself, eating the wrong type of foods, to then all of a sudden it switched. And, this voice here started making you go downhill. And this one here started going, hey, Doug, you're a pretty cool guy. You need to look after yourself and,
Yeah,
make some better habits.
yeah, it's been a whole journey, no other way to put it. And I deal with these voices every day in my entire life. Like growing up with high functioning autism, being that I was a kid and all that and didn't understand the world and didn't understand my potential at the time. Growing up, I mostly listened to this voice. There were like several voices telling me inside of me, Doug, this one was like, Doug, you're a very good kid. You have the potential to be one of the greatest people ever. And there was also that voice and over there telling me, he was like, you have a good side to you, Doug. Why not show that all the time when you go to school and interact with people? And then there was this little stinker here telling me, telling me, Doug, you should be angry at the world. You have autism. God could have chosen anybody other than you to have autism. You should be upset at the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it is powerful, Doug, isn't it? Like, because we all have that voice going. It's just part of human nature. It's always running non-stop all the time. I read a quote once from a guy who has written a book about this, and he said, "Can you imagine just for one day that little voice in your head becomes a real human being?" He said, "What do you think you do at the end of the day? Probably strangle it, because it never stops. Like, it never, ever, ever, ever stops. I mean, some of your little quotes there from your left-hand side is like, oh, I can't go to sleep. And I was meant to call that guy today. And you're trying to go to sleep in bed, but your mind is just running with all these things, which are not going to make any difference at all while you're trying to go to sleep. But this thing is just running because we feel that, we've messed up or something's not right. I mean, Doug, how many books have you written? 8 books, and yet you got into trouble at school. How many times? You'll never be an author, etc. What age was that when you were told that you were not going to, you're not going to make it through school? You'll be doing homeschooling.
I was 17 going on 18 at the time.
Well, can I go back before that? Like back way, but when you were earlier starting school, where things didn't go as well as you thought they'd go,
Yeah, I remember growing up in my hometown of Estes Park, Colorado. Education was really a struggle, and I did have a couple good years of education, which was my 3rd grade year with Mr. Leha, as well as a 4th grade year with Trisha Wynn, instructors that knew my potential and invested into me. That was the difference between other school years and those particular good years. But I remember going to kindergarten on my first day of school, feeling excited about being a big boy and being able to go to school. But it didn't work out like I expected. And I was asked to have the next day off from school because of what happened during the day. And after that, I realized that this was going to be a roller coaster. Like the song goes, life is a highway. For me, it was a highway, but it was a roller coaster of a highway.
And look, and it would have been hard at that age because you wouldn't have understood what was going on. Like, why on earth am I made to stay home? That must have been, those little voices must have been going like, wow, I'm excited. Next thing, why am I home? What did I do wrong? And then I would say that little voice on the left started making you wrong and making you feel different, because it would keep saying to you, well, I am different from everybody else, so this is not going to work. Is that correct?
Yeah, this voice right here there were a lot of thoughts that it gave me. Like, this voice would tell me, Doug, you should be jealous of all the other students that seemingly are enjoying school better than you do. You're never going to be able to enjoy school like those people. And there was.
And where do you think? Yeah, that's so true, man, and it's true for all of us. We all have this little battle between the voice in our head. Where did you start? Basically, just overeating, starting using food to make you feel better, and sodas and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, to answer that, I used to have a long time addiction to soda and sugar. I first had.
When did that start?
What was that?
When did that start?
That started in 2003 when I had my first ever soda. It was at a restaurant, and I remember drinking that soda, and I felt very happy for like about 10 minutes. And it was the first time, it was one of the few times I was feeling happy with myself.
So what you're saying is the sugar gave you a bit of a lift and you felt sort of good.
I did.
And that was, yeah. Did that start using that as an escape? Like, that little thing made you feel good to cover up where, things didn't feel so good?
Yeah, it felt so good that I used that to escape my depression. This voice was always telling me, you're never going to be happy unless you keep drinking sodas and eating all those sugary foods and fattening foods.
Yeah.
And over time, and there was also this voice. It didn't prevail as much as this one during that period, but it was always telling me, Doug, if you go down this path, it's going to be a long road back to who you used to be.
Yeah, and you got to 320 pounds, right?
Yeah, and most of that took place in high school.
Right.
By the time I began high school, I weighed about 220 pounds, which for my age was pretty overweight at the time.
Yeah.
And you noticed that when I first met you around that time in Los Angeles. Like, you looked at my weight and you were like, you were in support of this voice. You were in support of this voice, saying, you got to give up that sugar addiction, Doug. You're going to have diabetes in a few years. And
Yeah, and look,
at the time, I knew you were right, but I was like, I'm not feeling happy any longer, so I'm going to still use soda as an escape.
and then I think what it was probably maybe because I was coaching your brother at the time for acting, but then it was we sort of chatted over time. But then when you took on the full-time coaching, I think you're pushing 320 pound.
That is right. Yep. Around the time of my senior year, I started doing homeschooling instead of regular because I was constantly getting into trouble and I was not interacting well with the students and staff.
And that's where that little fella on the left-hand side started really taking over the dialogue in your head, like, oh, well, it's not worth it. This is how it's going to be. Who cares? All that type of thing. Yeah.
Pretty much. I remember in that senior year, I was so depressed that I started doing things that I shouldn't have done. Like my soda addiction was so bad that this voice on the left of me was trying to tell me, you need to start doing everything you can to fuel your addiction. Like I was getting into trouble for shoplifting things to fuel my addiction.
Yeah. Wow. And Doug, how many liters, you did tell me, I can't quite remember, how many liters a day were you drinking?
Well, I don't know the exact amount of liters, but from 2016 to about a little over a year ago, I was drinking like 2 liters of soda per day. So that was liters.
Wow, man, that's nearly 6 liters a day of like, gee whiz.
Yeah, and then what happened was right when 2020 started, like literally on New Year's Day, for some reason, I woke up in the middle of the night and I really had to go to the bathroom. And what happened was I went to the bathroom and took literally a leak that lasted for like 10 minutes. I don't know why. And the next thing I know, when I weighed myself on the scale the next morning, I had dropped 20 pounds overnight. And I was really puzzled because I didn't understand how I lost that weight if I wasn't exercising and eating right. And that was just the beginning of my health journey.
Okay, hang on, Doug. We got to kill that because that didn't make sense. Like, yeah, we can't.
Yeah. In the aftermath of graduation, I felt so bad about having not interacted well and having not let me try that again. So yeah, after high school and my terrible senior year, things were going downhill for me. I was not fitting in with people and I wasn't enjoying life. And at the same time, I was dealing with addiction and dealing with the voice on the left-hand side telling me, that I wasn't a good person,
Yeah, and you were just looking for ways to feel good, which is what addictions do a lot of the time, and your addiction was food, junk food, and sugar. So, Doug, thanks for sharing that, mate, and being, authentic about it and vulnerable. So when we started coaching, it was more about we're just going to work on books and your authoring because that's what you were good at. You'd already written, I think, 5 or 6 books by the time I'd sort of met you 6 years ago. But then when we started getting to know each other a bit better, I said, listen, what about this, mate? I said, you told me the other day you ditched the soda down the sink because suddenly the little voice on the right-hand side's going, you need to stop this because your health is going to be affected. And when you did that, I went, okay, why don't we keep doing this? Let's set you up with getting rid of the junk food. No more doing that. You're going to start eating healthier and walking, doing a little bit of light exercise. Now we're talking probably a few years back, but what you took on, Doug, to where you are now, what you're doing now is you're riding a bicycle like for 12 mile or something, I think you said the other day, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I'm biking to where I need to go. And I've also discovered that I get to certain places faster on a bike than I do with a car, even if they're long distance.
Yeah, and you're walking every day. When you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you take a half-hour walk. We've set that up in your schedule, yeah?
That's right. And I think I should go a little detailed into how I finally got this person to on the right of me to finally take over. Yeah, my addiction to soda a little over a year ago and sugar, it was so bad that I was spending all of my resources to the point that I had little or no money left. And I also was even stealing and shoplifting things to fuel my addiction. And as I was doing that, the voice right here was always saying, "Good job, Doug, keep doing it." And eventually one evening, somehow this voice took over. He was like, "Doug, you need to finally give up this sugar and soda addiction, or you're going to have diabetes. And in a few years' time, you'll probably have a heart attack." At such
and that's all totally changed now, right? Like your routine now we built over the last 12 months is walking every day, like up in the morning, bed at a reasonable time at night, and up walking your dog, coming back having a healthy breakfast, plenty of water, good smoothies, balanced diet. We've got you into yoga. We've got you into body weight training at home, and now you're starting a little bit of lightweight training. And we also introduced you to Kit Dale, who's a great friend of mine. He's a world champion jiu-jitsu player, I think 2 times world champion. And they formulated this diet book, which is, giving you a great variety of foods to eat. So you started using that and implementing, ideas in there. And to now, Doug, you're a guy who can go climbing, rock climbing, with your friends and family. You're riding a bike, you're walking, you're running, and you're doing yoga. And now you weigh probably around about 195 pounds from 320. And you're now a team leader on community groups that I created through another program. I've handed it to you. You've created websites, you created PDFs. You earn a little bit of money the other day from creating a PDF for someone, and we've got our Relentless and Unstoppable series. It's just that guy on the left is never going to go away. He'll always be there throwing things at you, but you've just transformed your whole world, Doug, which is inspiring people globally because of the messages we get. How does it make you feel now, looking back, that you actually created that and made it possible? I'm your coach and mentor, but I can't make you do anything. I can just go, "Doug, we should do this." But you took it on. So that little voice on your right really, really took on some power and started really getting you to see that you can create whatever you want.
Yeah, it's really been a privilege. A couple weeks ago, it was the 1-year anniversary of when I took that bottle of soda and dumped it down the sink.
Oh, wow. Wow.
The minute that I dumped it down the sink, plus any other soda I had at the time, I remember telling my mom before doing it, "All this soda can take its curse to the sewer."
Well, guys, here's another attempt at making this chapter in my life come to an end. This ruins lives. It's not good for you all, and it's not good for me.
And once I dumped all my soda down the sink, This was the beginning of our journey that you and I have been on to improve my health. Over the next couple weeks, I went through a little bit of a rough spot because of the 2-week withdrawal period that normally happens when you give up an addiction. During that 2-week period, this person right here was trying to tell me, Doug, take your credit card and order a soda because you need to feel happy. And this voice right here was telling me, Doug, push through your struggles. And then I had a near meltdown at Target where my anxiety got out of control. And this voice right here was telling me, Doug, go to the Target soda fountain and take a sip of soda. You need to feel happy again. And this voice was telling me, Doug, do not take a single sip of that soda, because if you do, you will be back to square one. You will not feel better if you do so. And luckily, this voice right here took over. And I never had another drop of soda ever again, and I still haven't since I gave it up. And over the next few months, I started getting better mentally and physically. I started losing weight. And as you and I both know, you put me on a weight loss program to lose weight by walking and drinking lots of water, and when I had the feeling of trying to feel good by drinking soda, when I was tempted to get soda, you would tell me to just drink water instead. And what started out as a walking program then turned into weight training and physical exercise. And I started getting out and doing activities that I never did when I was on soda and sugar. Like the past year's weight loss, man, what a trip.
Ah,
And
but that's all, Doug. It's a good story. Look, and we're running out of time, but obviously we've just taken a little light-hearted look at this, and you're a wonderful young man. You have a Christian faith. You've written a couple of books on different biblical stories and et cetera, et cetera. But all these things, everything that is in your world, your family, your faith, your understanding of this, how the human mind works, how it can take you one direction or take you another, how you're an inspiration to other people, and also dealing with when things don't go right. Now, just quickly, what do you do when you start to get overwhelmed and the autism actually heightens your anxiety, and when things aren't right, it can really take over?
Yeah, to answer your question, even though this guy overpowered this guy, there are still occasions to this day where this guy tries to take over. And what I do when that happens is I usually just go for a walk to work out all the energy in me. And I have a little snack if necessary, like an orange.
Yeah. Or go sit in the sun, sit outside, get a breath of fresh air. And look, you're taking on really good tools and distinctions, Doug. And one thing we implemented a couple of weeks ago, probably a month ago now, was yoga. How is the yoga going? Was it difficult at first, and how are you dealing with it now?
It was pretty difficult at first, but over time it gets better. And I just want to say that about exercise. Exercising last year and doing all that weight training I did was the greatest decision I ever made. Because the thing is, it makes you feel better mentally. It doesn't happen right away, but it happens over time.
Yeah, that's awesome, Doug. Well, listen, mate, we've run out of time, and we're going to be back again in another week with a bit more coffee and conversation. And Doug, you're going to put a few photos up here of your when you were 320 pounds, and then now we'll have a couple of photos of you making green smoothies and Mr. Fitness.
Yep, the photos, everybody, are right here.
Well, thanks, Doug. I appreciate your honesty, your authenticity, and your vulnerability. And you are an inspiration to myself because I work with you every day of the week. And you're an inspiration to people around the planet, mate, because we know that from the messages we get. So I acknowledge you for being a real stand for other people and yourself.
I really appreciate it. And I want to just say for the record before we go, Thank you for making me a team leader of Spark. It's been an absolute privilege. If you would have told me a year ago that I would be the team leader that I am for millions of people across the world, I would have said, you're crazy.
And look, we're not at 1 million people yet, but thanks for putting that out there. We hope so, you know. But you can, and the link will be shared there for people to just go and view the website and see what Spark is all about. And of course, Relentless and Unstoppable. Doug, you're a champion, man. Love you, respect you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much.